April 2nd, 1502. In a cold stone room at Ludlow Castle, a boy is drowning in his own sweat. He is 15 years old. 6 days ago, he was the golden future of England. Now, he is a shivering, gasping wreck. His skin is gray, his eyes wide with a terror that no prince should ever know. This is Arthur Tudor. He was born to save a kingdom broken by civil war. Instead, he is about to destroy it simply by dying. The disease consuming him has no name, or perhaps too many. They call it the sweating sickness, but that sounds too mild for the horror it inflicts. It strikes like a phantom. One moment you are laughing, the next, a malign vapor boils your blood from the inside out. Victims hallucinate, tearing at their clothes as heat radiates from their bodies like a furnace. Arthur isn't just sick, he's being cooked alive by his own biology. Beside him, his young Spanish bride, Catherine of Aragon, is also burning with fever, listening to her husband's ragged breaths slow down, until they stop forever. When Arthur takes his last breath, he doesn't just leave a grieving widow, he leaves a vacuum, a black hole that will suck in his family, his country, and eventually the entire world. Because the moment Arthur's heart stops, the path is cleared for a monster to take the throne. But before the monster can rise, the perfect prince must be buried. And the secrets of his death? They are just beginning to rot. To understand the tragedy, you have to understand the pressure. Arthur wasn't just a child. He was a political weapon. His father, Henry VII, had snatched the crown from a dead king on a muddy battlefield. The Tudor claim was weak, written in blood and shaky alliances. Arthur was the seal on that claim. He was the living treaty, the boy who united the warring houses of York and Lancaster. He was educated, athletic, and loved. He was King Arthur returned. And then there was Henry, the second son, the spare. Born 4 years later, Henry grew up in the nursery while Arthur was governing Wales. Henry was the backup plan, the boy who played at jousting while his brother learned to rule. No one paid much attention to Henry. He was just there, a redundancy. But in the shadows of the nursery, a jealousy, or perhaps a terror, was taking root. Imagine being the spare tire to a golden chariot. You only matter if the chariot crashes, and crash it did. When the news of Arthur's death reached London, it didn't just break a family's heart, it shattered the timeline. The spare was suddenly thrust into the blinding light. But Henry wasn't ready, and deep down, perhaps he knew that the crown he would wear was stolen from a corpse. The messenger arrived at Greenwich Palace in the dead of night. The king was asleep, dreaming of a dynasty that was already dead. When the priest finally told Henry VII, "Your dearest son is departed to God," the king didn't just cry. He collapsed. This was a man who had survived assassins, wars, and betrayal. But the death of his son broke him. He became a paranoid recluse, hoarding gold and seeing ghosts in every shadow. His wife, Elizabeth of York, tried to be the pillar of strength. "We are still young," she told him. "We can have more heirs." It was a brave lie. She was 36, old for childbirth in a time without medicine. But desperation makes people do dangerous things. To replace the perfect son she lost, she gambled her life. She got pregnant again immediately, and she lost. Within a year of Arthur's death, Elizabeth died in childbirth. The baby died too. The king was left alone in a silent palace, his golden future turning to ash. The death of Arthur didn't just kill a prince. It killed the joy of the entire court. And watching it all, with wide, terrified eyes, was young Henry. He learned a dark lesson that day. The universe hates the Tudors, and without a male heir, you are nothing. Back at Ludlow, the business of death was gruesome. A royal corpse cannot simply be buried. It must be prepared. Physicians descended on the boy's body with knives. They sliced him open, removing his internal organs, the heart that had failed, the lungs that had drowned. They filled the empty cavity with expensive spices, cinnamon, cloves, frankincense, not to honor him, but to mask the smell of rot. They wrapped him in wax-soaked cloth and sealed him in a wooden chest. For 3 weeks he lay in state, surrounded by candles, a silent reminder of God's cruelty. Then began the journey to the grave. It was a nightmare procession. The weather turned apocalyptic. Rain lashed down, turning roads into rivers of mud. Oxen had to drag the funeral cart because the horses couldn't find purchase in the mire. It was as if England itself was weeping or perhaps vomiting him out. The mourners walked through the storm, soaked and freezing, dragging the dead hope of a nation to Worcester Cathedral. And there, in a wet, cold grave, Arthur's officers snapped their staffs of office and threw them onto the coffin. They weren't just breaking wood, they were breaking the future. With Arthur in the ground, the crown passed to Henry. And this is where the history we know begins to bleed. Henry VIII wasn't born a monster. He was made one by trauma. He inherited a kingdom terrified of civil war and a father driven mad by grief. He inherited the widow, Catherine of Aragon, marrying his brother's wife in a desperate bid to keep the Spanish alliance alive. But Arthur's ghost haunted that marriage bed. When Catherine miscarried again and again and again, Henry didn't see biology. He saw God's punishment. He remembered a Bible verse. If a man shall take his brother's wife, it is an unclean thing. They shall be childless. Henry became convinced that his marriage was cursed by the ghost of his dead brother. This obsession drove him mad. It led him to divorce Catherine, breaking the heart of the woman who had held Arthur's hand as he died. It led him to break with the Pope, shattering 1,000 years of religious tradition. It led to the executioner's block, where the heads of wives and friends rolled into the straw, all because Henry was chasing a ghost he could never catch. Let's play a game of shadows. Imagine Arthur survives the fever. He wakes up on April 3rd, weak but alive. He becomes King Arthur in 1509. He is the gentle, scholarly king his tutors promised. He stays married to Catherine. They have a son. What happens to the world? There is no Church of England. The monasteries stand tall, their libraries unburned, their treasures unmelted. Thomas More keeps his head. Anne Boleyn remains a minor noblewoman, perhaps a mistress, but never a queen. The fires of the Protestant Reformation might still burn in Europe, but England remains a Catholic fortress. And look further west. The Puritans, those religious radicals fleeing persecution in Henry's England, they never leave. They never board the Mayflower. They never land at Plymouth Rock. The United States of America as we know it, founded on rebellion and religious dissent, is never born. The history of the modern world is rewritten by the survival of one 15-year-old boy. But games of what if are just smoke. The reality is bone and dust. In 2002, scientists used radar to peer beneath the floor of Worcester Cathedral. They found him, not in the fancy tomb above, but in a rubble-filled vault below. The wooden chest has long since rotted away. The spices have turned to dust. The hope of England is just a scatter of bones in the dark. He lies there, silent, while millions of tourists walk above him, obsessed with his brother. They come to see the story of Henry VIII, the 6 wives, the drama. They forget that the only reason that story exists is because Arthur died. He is the most important character in Tudor history, and he isn't even in the play. His heart, or what's left of it, is buried separately in a silver box in Ludlow, miles away from his body. A divided prince in death, just as his legacy divided a nation. We like to think history is shaped by great men making great decisions, but sometimes history is shaped by a cough, a fever, a microscopic germ in the blood of a teenager. Arthur Tudor's death was a tragedy for his family, but it was the fuel for the modern world. Without his death, England remains a medieval backwater. With his death, it became an empire, a breaker of chains, a forge for a new world order, albeit one built on blood and tyranny. So, as you stare at the portrait of the gentle boy who never was king, ask yourself, was it worth it? The wars, the executions, the religious schisms that killed thousands? If you could reach back through time and give Arthur a dose of penicillin, would you? Or is the blood-soaked history of Henry VIII the only way we could have arrived here today? History is a cruel author. It kills the best characters in the first act just to make the plot more interesting. And Arthur Tudor? He was the greatest sacrifice of all.
Your grace.
It is done.
By God, Thomas, you have truly earned your wolf's teeth today.
Now we can move forward.